We're able to read it out. It is a pleasure. There's no better place to have this announcement, this discussion, than the Monk School. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. This institution, over the course of the past two decades, faculty, students, graduates have helped shape Canada's domestic policies, our geopolitical strategies, and of course beyond our shores as well. And we wanted to make this announcement here because your insights here at Monk have never been in more demand than at this hinge moment in our history. Threats from a more dangerous and divided world are unraveling the rules-based international order. An order that was fused by the settlements at the end of the Second World War and the end of the Cold War, an order on which Canada has relied for longer than many of our lifetimes. And while the consequences of these developments are profound, we have agency. We have agency in determining what comes next. Canada can work towards a new international set of partnerships that are more secure, prosperous, just, and free. We can pursue deeper alliances with stable democracies who share our interests, values, principles, and history. And we can help create a new era of integration between like-minded partners that maximizes mutual support over mutual dependency. A new system of cooperation that promotes greater resilience rather than merely a quest for greater efficiency. Now, we can aspire to such a world, but aspiration without effort is just empty rhetoric. If we want a better world, we will have to make difficult choices and work harder than we've had to in decades. Government must start by fulfilling its most fundamental role, which is to defend Canadians. And the primary focus of my remarks today will be the nature and scale of what that will require in this new age. But first, let me stress that there can be no true security without economic prosperity. And that's one of the many reasons why so much of the energies of Canada's new government is dedicated and will be dedicated to transforming our economy to become the strongest in the G7. Getting there will require doubling the rate of home building, creating one Canadian economy out of 13, realizing our full potential as an energy superpower, pursuing a host of other nation-building projects, and diversifying our international commercial relationships with reliable partners. None of these goals will come easily or quickly. All will require ambition, collaboration, and yes, on occasion, sacrifice. In a darker, more competitive world, Canadian leadership will be defined not just by the strength of our values, but also the value of our strength. A more confident, united Canada, a stronger Canada can help transform this age of disorder into an era of prosperity for all Canadians. And simply put, if we want a more reliable world, we need a stronger Canada. If Canada came of age at Vimy Ridge, we matured in the decades that followed D-Day. Depuis la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, le Canada a affirmé son indépendance. Nous avons forgé notre propre identité et de nouvelles alliances. De plus en plus, nous nous sommes éloignés du Royaume-Uni et nous nous sommes rapprochés des États-Unis. Nous sommes restés aux côtés des Américains tout au long de la guerre froide et lors des décennies suivantes, alors que les États-Unis ont joué un rôle prédominant sur l'échiquier mondial. Aujourd'hui, cette prédominance est chose du passé. With the fall of the Berlin Wall, the United States became the global hegemon. Its gravitational pull on Canada, always strong, became virtually irresistible and made the US our closest ally and dominant trading partner. But now, the United States is beginning to monetize its hegemony, charging for access to its markets and reducing its relative contribution to our collective security. In parallel, the world's trade routes, allegiances, energy systems, and even intelligence itself are being rewired. Rising great powers are now in strategic competition with America. A new imperialism threatens. Middle powers must compete for interests and attention, knowing that if they're not at the table, they're on the menu. Indeed, the threats that Canada faces are multiplying. Hostile powers, including foreign governments and non-state actors, are transcending geography to threaten our sovereignty. Terrorist entities have developed new capabilities and expanded their reach to challenge global security and put our communities at risk. Cyber attacks from the other side of the world can undermine our government, bankrupt our businesses, and paralyze our infrastructure. Et plus de leur capacité en ce qui a trait à la cybersécurité, les capacités militaires traditionnelles d'États comme la Chine et la Russie sont, elles aussi, en croissance. Malheureusement, nous ne pouvons plus compter sur notre situation géographique pour protéger les Canadiens et Canadiennes face à ces menaces. The long-held view that Canada's geographic location will protect us is becoming increasingly archaic. Threats which felt far away and remote are now immediate and acute. And as our climate changes and the polar ice recedes, Canada's Arctic is becoming more accessible and more vulnerable to commercial and military activity. We've been jolted awake by new threats to our security and sovereignty, including from an emboldened Russia and an assertive China. Russia's barbaric invasion of Ukraine shattered previous assumptions of European post-Cold War security, leading to sharp reappraisals of the costs of collective responsibility, and underscoring how precious and precarious are international law, sovereignty, territorial integrity, and human rights. Disregarding these principles would not only betray our values, but also imperil our nation. When we stand up for territorial integrity, whether it's in Ukraine or West Bank and Gaza, we are also standing up for the territorial integrity of the Canadian Arctic. 10 years ago, Canada's defense spending fell to less than 1% of GDP. It has since doubled in cash terms, but it's still not close enough to face these mounting risks. The brave women and men who are protecting our sovereignty do not have the resources they need for a riskier world. Our military infrastructure and equipment have aged, hindering our military preparedness. I'll give an example or two. Only one of our 4 submarines is seaworthy. Less than half our maritime fleet and land vehicles are operational. More broadly, we're too reliant on the United States. And so for all those reasons, I'm announcing today that Canada will achieve NATO's 2% of GDP target this year, half a decade ahead of schedule. And we will further accelerate our investments in years to come, consistent with meeting these new security imperatives. We'll start by changing the way we support and invest in our armed forces. We will change the way we arm the men and women who serve, so we can fight on new battlegrounds in unfamiliar territory, so we can defend every inch of our sovereign territory, from seafloor to the Arctic to cyberspace, so we can protect Canadians, our interests, and our allies. Canada's new government will rebuild, reinvest, and rearm the Canadian Armed Forces with a strategy that rests on 4 pillars. Investing in the foundations of defense, the women and men who serve, and the equipment and infrastructure that they use. Second, we will enhance and expand our military capabilities. Third, we'll strengthen Canada's defense industry, and we will diversify Canada's defense partnerships. I call on all parties in Parliament to support these critical investments in our security and sovereignty. Our plan will help ensure that Canada is strong at home and reliable abroad. We will ensure that every dollar is invested wisely, including by prioritizing made-in-Canada manufacturing and supply chains. We should no longer send 3/4 of our defense capital spending to America. We will invest in new submarines, aircraft, ships, armed vehicles, and artillery, as well as new radar, drones, and sensors to monitor the seafloor and the Arctic. Nous allons réparer et entretenir les navires, les aéronefs et les infrastructures que, pour trop longtemps, nous avons laissé se dégrader. Nous allons investir dans les technologies satellites afin de détecter et prévenir les menaces pour le Canada ainsi que nos alliés. We will ensure Canada's north is protected with a larger, sustained, year-round Canadian Armed Forces presence on land, sea, and air. We will expand the reach, security mandate, and the abilities of the Canadian Coast Guard and integrate it into our NATO defense capabilities to better secure our sovereignty and expand maritime surveillance. As part of our new strategic approach to defense and security, we will also establish Borealis, the Bureau of Research, Engineering, and Advanced Leadership in Innovation and Science. Borealis will advance cutting-edge research in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and other frontier technologies essential to safeguarding our sovereignty. Nous allons pallier le manque de personnel dans les forces armées canadiennes en modernisant le processus de recrutement, en bâtissant de nouveaux logements et sur nos bases militaires, en améliorant l'accès aux soins de santé et aux services de garde. Nous allons donner à chaque membre de nos forces armées une augmentation salariale bien méritée, qui contribuera aussi au recrutement et à la rétention du personnel. En ce moment même, les forces armées canadiennes luttent contre les feux de forêt pour protéger leurs compatriotes et leurs communautés. Elles défendent nos côtes et nos eaux. Elles patrouillent l'Arctique et soutiennent nos alliés aux frontières de la Russie. Elles le font dans des conditions difficiles et trop souvent avec l'équipement inadéquat. Elles méritent mieux et elles auront mieux. In parallel, we are actively seeking to strengthen transatlantic security, particularly by becoming a participant in ReArm Europe. This will help diversify our military suppliers with reliable European partners and integrate the Canadian defense industry as full participants in 150 billion euros of Europe's rearmament program. To these ends, the Canada-EU summit later this month will be more important than ever. And Canada will arrive at this summit with a plan to lead, with new investments to build our strength in service of our values. This will include our support for a new NATO defense industrial pledge, which will be negotiated at the NATO summit. The Defense Industrial Pledge encompasses both assets and infrastructure that support our defense goals. Canada is confident that our economic strategy and our many strategic resources, from critical minerals to cyber, will make major contributions to NATO security. We will support tangible commitments from our allies to provide NATO with the necessary resolve to deter aggression and protect against all adversaries in all domains. Our fundamental goal in all of this is to protect Canadians, not to satisfy NATO accountants. Ce qui va assurer notre sécurité et celle de tous les citoyens des pays membres de l'OTAN, ce sont des progrès tangibles et non un calcul mathématique. C'est l'approche que le Canada va préconiser et celle que nous présenterons à nos alliés de l'OTAN plus tard ce mois-ci. We will undertake this transformation of our military capabilities strategically, deliberately, and impactfully. Canada's Department of National Defence will immediately design a new defence policy that reflects both today's and tomorrow's threats, informed by experts, some in this room, and the experience of allies and partners, including Ukraine. We're in the process of creating a new defense procurement agency that will be guided by that new defense industrial strategy and overseen by our newly appointed Secretary of State for Defense Procurement. The Defense Procurement Agency will centralize decision-making and move at pace to get our armed forces the equipment they need when they need it. We will ensure that Canadian workers and businesses benefit from the huge increase in defense procurement that will be required, using Canadian steel, Canadian aluminum, Canadian critical minerals, Canadian cyber. Nous allons renforcer nos capacités industrielles et nous donner les outils nécessaires afin de répondre à nos besoins en matière de défense et saisir les opportunités associées. Nous allons investir davantage dans les armes et les munitions canadiennes, en plus de celles produites par un éventail d'alliés. It will be challenging to protect Canada and Canadians against growing and changing threats, all while building a stronger Canadian economy. But these are the imperatives of a more dangerous world. And as His Majesty the King reminded us just 2 weeks ago, our greatest challenges present immense opportunities. To build the military we need, we can deploy and develop Canadian innovation, Canadian ingenuity, Canadian industry. The transformation of our military capabilities can help with the transformation of our economy. Today, national defense already accounts for over 275,000 direct and indirect jobs across the country in over 3,000 communities, every province, every territory. Our renewed commitment to defense will create tens of thousands of more fulfilling, high-paying careers for Canadian workers. It will create enormous opportunities for Canadian businesses, yes, in the defense sector, but across a link of supply chains, from the production of the raw materials, steel and aluminum, to the truckers and rail workers who ensure their transit, to those who transform those materials into equipment, weapons, ammunition, vehicles. It will help drive innovation in sectors including AI, quantum, and cyber. It will safeguard Canada, as well as our interests and allies abroad. It will build Canada strong. Nous allons assurer notre sécurité dans un monde qui a été profondément transformé. Nous allons créer de bonnes carrières et de la prospérité à travers le Canada. En ce faisant, nous allons protéger cette prospérité, protéger notre qualité de vie et protéger notre façon d'être. Throughout Canada's history, there have been turning points where the world's fortunes were in the balance. That was the case at the start of the Second World War, just as it was at the end of the Cold War. And each time, Canada chose to step up, to assert ourselves as a free, sovereign, and ambitious nation, to lead on the path of democracy and freedom. And we are once again at such a hinge moment. Il est temps pour le Canada de tracer sa propre voie, de s'affirmer sur la scène internationale. Il est temps de défendre nos valeurs avec ceux qui les partagent. Il est temps de partager avec le monde une approche et une vision distinctes. Now is the time to act with urgency, with force, with determination. As the world grows more dangerous, Canada will ensure our country is protected from coast to coast to coast, while creating higher paying jobs across the land. Canada will lead with the values the world respects, the resources the world wants, an economy that leads the G7. We will build a strong, secure, and sovereign future for all Canadians and for all time. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Yeah.